I'm out here on the open ocean again with my coworkers Sal and Century, and Sal brought his brother Al along. On the last fishing trip I went on with Sal and Century, we went salmon fishing. On that trip we limited very early, so our trip was actually pretty short. We finished up at 9:30, so we thought it would be a great idea to actually spend more time out on the water, and we decided that we were going to go rock fishing. So for this fishing trip, we chose Half Moon Bay Sportfishing out of Half Moon Bay. We departed out of Pillar Point, and we traveled about 1 to 2 hours outside of Half Moon Bay to get these rockfish. And every time we dropped our lines in the water, there was plenty of action, and we saw more than a couple Ling Cod and different species of rockfish. Come on. Since this was my first time rock fishing off of a charter boat, there were definitely some victories and some lessons learned. It's pretty obvious that my pole wasn't up to task of fishing for rockfish. My rod was flexing a lot more than it should have. My reel was up to par though. My Daiwa BG 4000 actually did a pretty good job. I definitely wished I had a stiffer fishing rod when I was out there, but it did its job. Most of the rod flexing was because of the 10-ounce weight that was attached to it, and this was also my first time using a feather rig with squid, and it's actually very effective at catching rockfish. I was really surprised by it. Most of the Lingcods caught on this boat though were caught using swim baits or heavy metal lures, and I think next time I'm definitely going to try those out. You got an idea on this?
Huh?
Can I fish with this?
Brown rockfish?
Okay.
Want to pop them off for you?
Yeah.
Where's your bag? Right here.
Yeah. Of course, with all these new fishing experiences, I was of course noobing it pretty hard. So I had a couple lessons that I had to learn. The first lesson is that once you get your fish up to the surface, you want to make sure that when you hand line them in, you keep them dangling over the boat and not over the ocean, because if you hook them on the lip, they could easily fall back in. So it's just good practice to keep it over the boat and not over the ocean, especially when you're trying to de-hook them.
What kind of fish is this?
Oh, damn it.
Oh, you got a Ling Cod?
Unfortunately, I didn't catch a Ling Cod on this trip, but my boy Century caught one. And a really good tip if you manage to catch a Ling Cod is to make sure they don't break the surface, because they panic when they actually get close to the top of the water. And so it's very good practice just to keep them under the surface and call for a gaff or a net, and the deckhand will usually come around and help get that Ling Cod out the water for you. And what was really interesting was that once you get a Ling Cod out the water, they generally throw up whatever their last meal was. And the trend that we saw on the boat was that a lot of the Ling Cods were throwing up octopus when they were brought on board. And so a lot of the anglers were able to rebait that octopus to try and catch more rockfish. Another thing I learned is that you really should diversify your bait. Squid is a great bait for rockfish and Ling Cod, but a really good bait for Ling Cod is a smaller rockfish. So if you manage to catch a smaller one, you might want to fillet it up and use that as bait, because the Ling Cod are crazy attracted to the meat from other fish. And when you hook that fillet, make sure you hook it through the meat side, because the scales will be pretty hard to get through. Al managed to get a Ling Cod also, and I think from what I remember it was 11 pounds. And this Ling Cod also managed to throw up an octopus after taking it out of the water. So Al managed to use that for bait again. So mostly I was able to catch canary rockfish and brown rockfish. I think I got a bite from a Ling Cod because I sent one of the smaller rockfish I caught back down as bait, and when I brought it back up it had huge bite marks in it, but the boat had to move, so I had to reel up.
It's going on. What is it?
Brown rockfish.
Nice. Sabus, what's the word?
Fishing is a way to relaxation. Key to the mind, body, and soul. See you tomorrow.
So my plans for these 2 rockfish are to bake them, and I've never done it before, so I've actually looked up a recipe on the internet. I had a few of the basic ingredients, so I figured I was going to run with that. On the charter boat they had a basic fish cleaning service and really only had them scale and gut it. But when you take it back to the house, it's just good to take out whatever's left, the gills, the guts, and remove the bloodline, because that actually removes the fishy taste. So since it was already descaled, it was actually a lot easier to score the fish. I needed to put 3 slits into the sides of the fish so that I could easily fill it in with the lemon slices and also the seasoning and the garlic that I had prepared. So here I begin to season the fish with some Himalayan pink sea salt, making sure that I'm getting it into the slices that I made in the side of the fish. Here's the brand that I used. Next up, we're going to use some garlic pepper seasoning, and I want to make sure that I'm getting it into these slices also. Next up, I'm adding some dried thyme leaves, making sure that I'm putting them in the body cavity too. Putting on some dried rosemary leaves. And then I began to stuff it with lemons and the garlic. I lightly coated it in corn oil because I didn't have olive oil, and I put it into the oven at 350 degrees for about 40 minutes. When the time was up, the fish came out amazing. The meat was white and flaky, and the combination of all the herbs, lemon, and garlic made this taste amazing. If you try this recipe out, tell me how it came out in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.